It's time now for the Morning Magazine, brought to you by the Riverview Hospital in Wisconsin Rapids and Comfort Air Heating, Cooling, Plumbing. Now, with the Morning Magazine, here's Carl Hilke.
Thank you, Jerry, and good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's show on AM 1320, as well as on the web at WFHR.com, and we welcome our friends from River Cities Media, who are here videotaping today's show as well. It's time for our monthly visit with Wood County Board Chairman Lance Pliml. Good morning, Lance.
Good morning, Carl. Hey, let's move this show out into the parking lot. It's a beautiful day out here.
It is. It's gorgeous.
September.
It is. It is absolutely gorgeous.
But you're going to make me sit in the studio.
That's right. We got the camera here. We got, I don't know. At least I didn't have to wear makeup. You just got back from the Wisconsin Counties Association's 75th annual conference. The governor addressed that conference yesterday. But first off, there's some news involving you. I guess you're the president-elect?
Well, yeah, the title is second vice president. I would serve as president of the Wisconsin Counties Association about 2 years down the road. It's one of those processes where you serve in that capacity, you move up, and then if you stay out of trouble and, and everything goes well, you end up being the president a couple of years down the road. So, that's I think it's a real feather in the cap of our county. It shows that we have had the ability to work together. We've worked through problems. And as that goes on and time passes, people notice that at a state level. They notice that we run programs effectively and efficiently. And it's a reflection of that cooperation. I think that allows you to assume a leadership position at some point. Either that or you're just around long enough.
Congratulations.
Sure. Looking forward to it.
Okay. Well, the governor's speech was entitled by his office as Partnering Together to Grow Our Economy, and he told you folks yesterday he's optimistic about the economy. He says that economic success is not about reaching a number, though. So that earlier campaign promise, which I've told you before, and I've said on the air, I just thought that was don't put an exact number on something. Just say, we're going to create jobs. We're going to move in a positive direction. When you put an exact number on it, that's a bullseye.
Yeah, that's tough. I wouldn't do that either. But, when you're trying to get a message across to a large audience, I think you tend to do that. The message was extremely positive, but the message also has to, work in conjunction with what is actually happening out there, in our communities. And, we've seen some tremendous strides at the state level, and there's a lot of states trying to emulate what we have done in Wisconsin now. We went from about the 43rd worst state to do business into the top 10 now. We've made some real positive strides in that respect. We've had businesses moving in from northern Illinois because of their tax climate and their pension problems. We have some businesses that we're talking to from the Minneapolis area that are moving across the border into Wisconsin. So as we provide those opportunities, as long as a government, as we provide the infrastructure, and that means highways, it also means broadband build-out, communications, and an educated workforce, we have a chance to compete. And I think we are on pretty firm footing in that regard going forward. One of the things the governor talked about, though, there's still a lot of work to do there. And there's a lot of ways to approach those particular problems. And for everybody, and this is going to, you probably would have segued into this, and I probably should shut up so you get there, but, our tech schools do a tremendous job of training workers. If you go to the JobNet site, there were something like 40 to 50,000 unfilled jobs advertised last week through the state of Wisconsin. And those are good-paying jobs. The problem is we often have people that are not trained to fill those jobs. And those don't often occur through a four-year education at a university, but through our technical college programs. They're very specific skills. So I'm going to let you lead into that because you have the memo in front of you.
Well, yeah. Well, that was from the Heart of Wisconsin Chamber of Commerce. And during our update yesterday with the Chamber, we mentioned that on October 14th, over 60 local 9th and 10th graders will be boarding the heavy metal bus tour to learn about local manufacturing. They'll be touring companies like Domtar, Corenzo, Tweet Garrett, Mariani Packing. And then they head to Mid-State Technical College for lunch. And Wisconsin Governor Scott Walker will be there to talk to the students about the importance of manufacturing in Wisconsin. So hats off to the Chamber and Mid-State for pulling that off.
Yeah, absolutely. A great accomplishment. And I think it reflects very well on what we have accomplished through our tech school programs. Manufacturing is still extremely important in Wisconsin. We're one of the leading manufacturing states in the country, and we can continue to do so with some of the resources that we have. But manufacturing will not be what it was in the past. I mean, you're not going to see typically giant smokestacks, built up. You're not going to see these companies that typically employ 4, 5, 10,000 people in one place. You're going to see more specific manufacturing, CNC type jobs, people in specialized fields, and then the people needed to run those robotics and some of those other very highly refined skills. And you tend to get those skills through the technical college. And one of the things that I thought was, it was brought out at the conference, and it really impressed me, is one of the largest segments increased attendance at our technical schools is actually 4-year degreed people going back to the tech schools for specialized education. Now, you would have never seen that, 10 years ago. That career path out of high school was always go to a 4-year institution, get a bachelor's degree in something, and you'll be successful in business. And what we're finding out is we often have jobs now with 2 years of very specialized training. You come out with the skills to make a commensurate amount of money, have a great career, and you don't end up with that student debt. So my point isn't to discourage anybody from going that route, but it's to say there are other options, and we need the ability to identify those options, not when our young adults are 18 or 19, but to identify some of those possibilities maybe when they're in 7th, 8th grade, and start to move them along those paths. And the opportunities like this to introduce them to some of the options out there, other than, we're just going to run you through a program in a general education at a 4-year institution, might not be the best route for everybody.
Okay. Well, another issue that came up at your conference was the county saying they should have the right to decide for themselves whether to take extra federal funds to cover Medicaid recipients, having to do with Obamacare and the like. Your thoughts on that debate as it was going on at your meeting?
Yeah, there was a little bit of debate on that, and actually the final vote followed the recommendation of the Resolution and Laws Committee, which was to not go that direction. And the reason for that, again, is to not create islands around the state, which would create even bigger problems, we think, as an association for those particular counties. Right now, healthcare obviously is a huge issue, and if you're watching TV or listening, you can hear the filibusters as we reach the possibility of having those the sequester ramifications fall into place. That's the great unknown out there, and we have no idea. I can tell you the federal government doesn't know what the Affordable Care Act is going to do. The state government doesn't know what those ramifications will be, and we at the local level are at the mercy of those, in the long run. So, like any other program, I guess if you were asking Lance's personal opinion, I'd say step back. The devil is in the details, and find out what those ramifications are going to be ahead of time.
That would seem logical.
It would seem logical. When you start creating islands, it creates problems that usually are unforeseen and not thought about ahead of time. If you provided some of those, and let's say it was even a great problem, what are you going to do with maybe the influx of people needing those services that tend to move just across the border into your county? So it's something that we need to constantly look at. From a Wisconsin Counties Association standpoint, we constantly update our platform. We look at what our stance is going to be, and then we lobby in the direction that we think is best for all 72 counties, not one or two here or there throughout the state.
Okay. In terms of the relationship between the state, as represented by Governor Walker, and the counties, was there any concerns expressed to the governor or about, say, like unfunded mandates or too much micromanaging of local affairs, which mayors have complained about, and it seems to be a continuous thing going back since as long as I've been covering politics in the state of Wisconsin.
That's been the single biggest problem always, the mandated service and then not the funds to be able to provide that service. We kind of have a unique situation right now in the state of Wisconsin, and that is our governor came from county government, and the chairman of the Joint Finance Committee came from county government. So those guys tend to understand that those unfunded mandates are intolerable. We just can't deal with those. So we have seen less and less of that as we have gone forward. We certainly, through the lobbying efforts, have their ear, and have the opportunity to sit down and talk about those things. But we have seen those become less onerous as time has gone on. What's real interesting, in the opportunities to attend some of these conferences and open the eyes of some of those people who have not attended before, is the scope of county government. And I've talked about this with you before, Carl, but when I first ran for the county board and somebody asked me, what does the county do? I said, well, we take care of county highways and we have a sheriff's department. And I said, I'm sure there's some other people who do some other things. County government encompasses just about everything that affects your daily life, from mental health issues, all the social services that are administered through our offices, corrections, the court system, the highways that we talked about, parks. I mean, there's no part of your daily life that really isn't touched by county government. We administer almost every state and federal program that is in existence. It just happens to be done at the federal level. County government is an administrative arm of state government. So we do have their ear. Are we always happy? No. But I think there's much less in the way of mandated services than there once were. And we constantly look in that direction and see how we can fine-tune that. And that leads to scope of government. The one thing I think we really need to look at is, what is the mission of government? What are we supposed to provide? What do we need to provide? And that tends to have expanded greatly over time. There might be a program we need to provide, but do you provide it at the base level or with a whole bunch of value added that increases cost greatly? And those are the things when we talk about these lean government conferences that we really look at and try to define exactly what service it is, at what level that we need to provide it.
Okay. If you're just joining us on the Morning Magazine, welcome. We're getting our monthly Wood County update from Wood County Board Chairman Lance Pliml. And that gets into my next topic, the Wood County budget. And there's talk of a tax levy increase?
Yeah, I don't think you'll see that, but let me explain. We've had this is a really interesting topic, and this is one of the conversations that I had with some of the legislators down at this conference. We in our county, in Wood County, have reduced our tax rate for 16 consecutive years. So we've cut the rate over 16 years. Rate is important, but so is total levy. If we had growth here, you could, in effect, cut the rate, but because of the amount of tax base, you'd have more money to operate with. We've not only cut spending from roughly $120 million to $90 million, we've also cut the rate at the same time. Now, anybody who's out there who's, even slightly inclined in math would know you can't cut the rate to zero. The problem is the way government is set up, and this is nonsensical, is that each year the mandates that have been put in place by the state, which says you can't increase spending over last year's rate limits, means that if we are fiscally responsible and we cut our taxes and keep that money in your pocket, which is very important that we keep that money in your pocket out there, then the next year our base rate is what we cut it to. And the conversation we have had over and over is we would like the ability to reserve that rate. So you were rewarded if you used it. In other words, and if you didn't use it, it was kind of that use it or lose it.
Okay.
As we become extremely responsible and we cut those rates, we in effect tend to cut our own throats. We could have in that same time increased, tax rates by probably, the cumulative effect might have been 30%. We held it at zero. And yet if something came up that was an emergency and we needed to increase by 3 or 4% in 1 year, we couldn't do it. Yet the other people have constantly worked off that higher number. So what brought that conversation to light is, should we use the authority we have and increase those reserves should that unforeseen emergency come up? And those things happen. Infrastructure, roads occasionally, or bridges, let's say. Build out of our tower system, for instance, for emergency communication. I don't think you'll see that happen. We have a pretty fiscally responsible board. And when I say we, I get one vote like everybody else, and I respect those votes. I try not to do it ever on the air. I might say I think, and that's the board, but it's a we. And me isn't a good word either. You know, it's a group of people who make decisions. The thought process there, though, was, do we reserve some of that capacity that they take away from us every year? And my conversation with those legislators is allow us to reserve the capacity we don't use. In effect, let us put that in the bank. Not the real money, but the ability to use that capacity should we ever need it. And the fact that for 16 consecutive years we've shown extreme fiscal responsibility, we're penalized every year, and the people who don't are rewarded. You know, it's crazy.
Yeah. So what's the response when you talk to lawmakers about that?
You know, I think we're making headway in that respect. Last year they gave us a little bit of latitude. You know, you were able to reserve, for instance, a 0.5% of what you didn't use. But it's really important, I think, that you don't have that use it or lose it mentality. I mean, people out there in the public just hate to hear that we spent it because it was available, or we spent it because it was in the budget. You know, a budget's a working document, and we have to have those. I don't know if any of you federal representatives are listening. It's a budget. We have to have one. You know, you might want to think about that out there. But at the local level, we set budgets. We operate within those budgets. But they're working documents. And our attitude at the county level has been, if we budgeted it and we don't need it, don't spend it. So we budget for, in effect, you know, with thought in mind of being very accurate, but conservatively, we budget on this, you know, to be safe so we don't exceed those. But at the end of the day, if we don't need it, let us put it in that rainy day fund.
Okay. So you would have something for
that emergency, and if that fund builds to a comfortable level, then again we continue to cut the tax rate.
Now, what kind of effect are things like the NEPCO development, frac sand mining? What kind of effect on your overall tax base are developments like that going to have on Wood County?
Extremely positive. The only way that we have the ability to really move forward is to increase the tax base. And the NEPCO development out there has been a huge success to this point. You know, we've seen the lots sold out there. We've seen the construction of homes. When we see the frac sand industry with build out of infrastructure, some of that we don't see come to the forefront right away because it's done through, you know, TIF districts where tax revenue, in effect, is deferred for a number of years to handle the infrastructure costs, and we don't actually see those dollars, nor do the school districts, for instance, right away. But in the long run, realistically, if you had 20 TIFs out there and one of them, in effect, matured every year, you would see a tremendous increase in tax base. And that's what we need to do. We need to continue to see that build out. Where you've seen suffering is in places where, for instance, a mill is closed. Port Edwards might be a great example. You know, as you have a highly functioning paper mill and a valuation on property that is much higher than it will be or may be even going into the future, you see a reduction in base, and then you still have to provide those services that are out there. So build-out's important. Economic development going forward. When I was interviewed for the position that I was just elected to, you know, they asked me what the most important thing was, and I said economic development. Because without economic development, none of the other stuff that seems emergent today will ever happen. And, you know, and those emergent needs are, you know, transportation, obviously. We have about a 30 to 50 year replacement schedule on some of these bridges and roads, and realistically, with the weight and amount of traffic on those, we probably need a 20 to 30 year schedule. We have a structural deficit that doesn't work, and the only way that we can handle those needs and some of the other ones in Medicaid and others are build out a tax base.
Okay. Now, in terms of the governor talking about optimistic about job growth, and he says he told your group he'll be holding a meeting in the Hudson area to visit with companies from neighboring Minnesota. Did you get a chance to talk to him about some of the things we're doing here? Obviously, the Chamber's going to have that chance, and the Technical College when he comes here for the heavy metal bus tour. But we're going to have, very soon, we're going to have the groundbreaking for a new business park on Highway 54 in the village of Buren. And we got some infrastructure in place right here in central Wisconsin. Do we need to make sure that the governor is focused on the center as well as both ends?
We always kind of sometimes feel that we are the poor stepchild, and we don't receive some of that funding. And we have built it. In many cases, we need additional dollars for infrastructure and transportation. Frac sand would be a great example of that. The governor, no matter what side of the aisle you're on, has put in place programs which allow those businesses to come to our state. The biggest problem in some of the surrounding states is the economic environment. Businesses, and I can say this, I don't care what side of the aisle you sit on, businesses don't like uncertainty.
No.
They need certainty. And when you have unfunded pension liabilities in the state of Illinois and debt that's just monumental, and you have some of the same problems in Minnesota, when you have certainty, when you know that you're going to have the resources available, that you know that you have a stable tax structure, that you know what you're going to be looking at 10 years down the road, you tend to migrate to those places. And, we have done that to a great extent over the last 2 to 3 years. We have put some certainty in place for those businesses, and we have seen a migration from northern Illinois into Kenosha, Racine counties into the Milwaukee area, some into Madison, and I guess we might as well look at all the borders, and Minnesota is certainly one of those. And there are some opportunities. There are some businesses that have been talking about moving in to that Hudson area. So
now we need them to go a little farther east. Hey, we got some nice property here in central Wisconsin.
Well, that is true. And obviously, though, if those businesses exist there's probably some symbiotic relationships that exist with those businesses in central Wisconsin. It's when you build one business, there's typically ancillary businesses that service things. People don't think about it, but, with frac sand mining, you see bulldozers and trucks and other stuff, but there's certainly there's construction that goes on at the site. There's people that you need mechanics, you need engineers, you need a lot of different people with specialties to put those plants up. So a lot of jobs spin off from those jobs. And if we have more of those, when a company comes, other satellite ventures tend to migrate around them.
Are you pretty comfortable or optimistic yourself about our local job creation capacity with the changes that have happened recently in Wood County?
I think we're moving the right direction. We have several different opportunities in this county. For many, many years, the paper industry was really the large and somewhat sole huge employer in the area. And obviously, we've seen some contraction there. But people forget that, we still have tremendous paper-making capacity here. We're one of the largest manufacturers in the state of Wisconsin from that respect. We also have a huge medical community up in the Marshfield area, and one of the premier clinics in the United States.
And even here in Wisconsin Rapids.
In Wisconsin Rapids, you've seen some build-out. But what people forget about is that whole middle part of the county. From an agricultural standpoint, we are the largest cranberry grower in the world. And all you have to do is look around and, you hate to name names all the time, but, just look at some of the construction that has been done by Butch Gardner and their companies up in the Pittsville area. And you look at those types of businesses that revolve around agriculture. Frac sand mining is another one. We have a lot of opportunities, and the one thing we've done a pretty good job of is I have seen whole communities and counties kind of, roll up the sidewalks and call it a day when they've been hitting a particular industry. We've done an outstanding job of diversifying industry over the last number of years. My personal feeling is you're going to see growth from these smaller companies. That's where it's going to come from. They'll grow to those 50 to 100 employee type businesses. You're probably not going to see as many smokestacks in the future as you did in the past.
The technology's changed.
Technology's changed. What it used to take 50 people to do, a machine does now. But it takes extremely bright people to design those machines, to run those machines, to install them, and to make sure they continue to operate.
Well, unfortunately, we're out of time.
We can't be already. I'm not done talking.
Okay. Well, again, congratulations on your promotion within the Counties Association, and we look forward to visiting with you again next month.
Thank you, Carl.
Okay. Wood County Board Chairman Lance Pliml, wrapping up part one of today's show. The Morning Magazine, as always, is brought to you by Riverview Medical Center. With you, it's personal and comfort air.